Hello and welcome back to Mind Redesign, the Dr. Blass Podcast. I'm Dr. Elsie Blass, and I feel like today's episode is less of an episode and more like me opening the door and saying, come inside. I need to show you what I've been building. Because a lot has changed. I've changed, my work has changed, the technology around us has changed. And the vision I have for what Mind Redesign can become has changed dramatically. So if you've been with me for a while, I want to officially welcome you into the new chapter, this new next chapter. And if this is your first time, you're arriving at a really interesting time because this podcast is no longer going to be me sitting behind a microphone simply teaching psychology. And I love psychology. I love neuroscience. And honestly, I love understanding human behavior. A little bit obsessed, maybe a lot. But I want this show to become something much more alive. I want to bring you behind the scenes while I build. I also want you to hear the decisions, the mistakes, the strange ideas, the conversations that change the entire direction of the company. The days where something works, the days where absolutely nothing works, and then everything in between, and the psychology of entrepreneurship, the behavioral patterns that appear when you're trying to build something larger than anything you've ever built before, the relationship between identity and money, between nervous system regulation and leadership, between technology and humanity, and now, increasingly, the relationship between artificial intelligence and human behavioral change. Because that's where my work has evolved. And the interesting thing is, I didn't plan it. In fact, I was trying very hard not to build another technology company. Today, I'm going to tell you how this happened because there is a much larger lesson underneath this story. And that lesson is this. Sometimes your next evolution does not require you to work harder instead, or work harder inside the life you've already created. Sometimes the architecture inside itself has expired, and you have to be willing to redesign it. My journey in one-on-one sessions came to a place of a pause, and then it expired. When the model that made me successful stops fitting you, like it fit me, I realized that I had to change. And what I mean by that is you create a business model, and that business model will either continue evolving with you or it'll spit you out and say, you can't keep up with me. Let me give you the context. Last year, I owned another app, and that app was built around a very different business model. It was heavily content driven. I created content, people consumed the content. I created more content, people consumed more content. And in a subscription business engagement, this matters. So if people became bored, I needed new material. I needed new lessons, new programs, new experiences, new reasons for them to open the app, which meant that somewhere underneath this beautiful digital product was a very simple equation. My continued output was required to sustain the product value. And for a period of time that worked until it didn't, because something else was happening at exactly the same time. Let me show you. Let me tell you about this. I was entering perimenopause. Okay. I'm 44 years old now. My body was changing. My energy was changing. My cognitive bandwidth was changing. And I began realizing that I did not have the psychological, emotional, or physiological capacity, and quite frankly, the desire to spend the next several years feeding an insatiable content machine. And that's important because sometimes we're very quick to interpret those moments as I'm losing motivation, I'm not disciplined enough, something is wrong with me. I wasn't even trying to hold space for that. I was like, listen, I'm not going to sit here and lie to myself. That is just not It's just not happening. I don't have it. I don't have it in me. And sometimes the more sophisticated interpretation is the operating model of this business is no longer compatible with the human being operating it. I had to be very honest about that. And that's very, very different. For you as a business owner or as a leader to sit there and say to yourself, listen, baby, I don't have it. I don't have it, my love. I can't do this. I can't maintain this. And this is okay, right? Because perseverance is rewarded in our society. And I think high achievers struggle tremendously with this. Consistency is rewarded. Grit is rewarded. We are constantly told, keep going, push harder, don't quit. But there is another form of intelligence that doesn't get discussed nearly enough. Knowing when persistence has become allegiance to an expired architecture. I could have forced myself to keep producing. I probably could have done, I could have done it. But I was starting to feel like I need a business where I can still spend time with my family, where I'm not every day I'm hustling. Like, I can't live like that. What is this? I was already starting to feel drained and ready to retire. I wanted to reach more people. And that's when the shifts just really started to take place. Knowing when persistence has become allegiance to an expired business model. I could have forced myself again to keep producing. But the question wasn't, can I keep doing this? Even though I knew I couldn't. The question became, do I want to build a future that requires me to keep doing this? And my answer was no. So I sold the app. And when I sold the app, I didn't have some giant master plan sitting behind it. There was no dramatic movie scene where I closed one company and opened a folder labeled $1 billion AI business. That was absolutely not the way this went down. I thought, maybe I'm done. Maybe I'm relaxed. Maybe I'll retire for a little while. Maybe I'll figure out what the next season is when I get there. And I went back into my academic work. I began moving deeper into the intersection of behavioral science, neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and engineering. And I knew that I needed to go into another PhD program because initially I had to be honest with myself. See, this episode is about you being honest with yourself. So much so that you don't judge yourself, you allow yourself to be yourself, and you tell yourself the truth so you can make a prime decision for yourself. It's all about yourself. This episode is about yourself. And in that moment, I said to myself, and I began moving deeper into this intersection. And I kept thinking about Mind Redesign and the 20 years of research and experience, because Mind Redesign wasn't just content to me. It was the methodology beneath the years of my work. So I trademarked Mind Redesign. I applied for the trademark. I applied for the copyrights of the procedure and the Mind Redesign model framework, if you will, to help people change, that I've been using for years, that we've tested and tried over the decades and have proven that this method works. And then I created the B Synaptic Recode, and I also entered into the copyrights for that and the trademark for it, which was approved, by the way. So excited. I finally received the approvals. And and I asked myself, how do we identify where someone's thinking gets hijacked? How do we recognize the default responses that exist and the patterns that exist? And then how do we interrupt them? Those were my questions over the decades that I've been in this work. How do we create a better behavioral route? How do we stabilize that route enough that it becomes increasingly accessible when stress returns? And I started thinking, maybe I don't need another consumer app. Maybe I license the intellectual property. That much was easier. I'll take Mind Redesign. I'll take the B Synaptic Recode, and we'll license this behavioral framework into existing artificial intelligence ecosystems. Maybe like Grok, Gemini, and GPT, right? ChatGPT. I call it GPT now because I'm like, I can't say ChatGPT every day. When I'm speaking to myself or a client or a colleague, I start saying GPT. They've already built the infrastructure. They have engineers, they have capital, they have millions of users. Why should I do all of the heavy lifting? I thought this was a brilliant plan. And then I had the conversation. I had the conversations. The first conversation was with a billionaire. My very first conversation was with a billionaire about this. And I shared my Mind Redesign model and all the things. And he said to me, because I was looking for an investor at the time, and he said to me, no, don't allow anyone to invest. Right now, you take all of your capital, all of your money. If you have a house, put pretty much like a lien on it, like do all the things that need to be done in order to have full reign over this. He was like, I would love to invest, but for your best interest, I would tell you, do not allow anyone to invest in this company just yet. Get it to the place. And then he laid it out for me. And then he said, and then if you want to do the investors and you want to sell the company because you have $1 billion idea here, and it is what it is, So when I had that first conversation, I was like, okay, great. I'm going to reach out to Grok. I'm going to reach out to ChatGPT. I'm going to reach out to these companies, and I'm going to have them license my behavioral model, because right now those models, those AI models, they only have basic, it's what we call in psychology, basic, you've probably heard of cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, it offers you a basic model of that. And I was like, well, this is genius. I can jump on their bandwagon. So I talked to a friend of mine. Now he's best friends with Grant Hill. You might know him. He's a previous basketball player. And so I spoke to my friend of mine who's a millionaire, and I said to him, and I'm only labeling millionaires and billionaires just so you can see that these are people who have been in the field, they've done the businesses, I'm speaking to people who have done things before, okay? And so I spoke to him, and he's connected to some extraordinary accomplished people, by the way, okay? And we were having a conversation about what I wanted to do next. And I'm explaining this licensing idea. I'm telling him I have this proprietary behavioral methodology. Artificial intelligence is expanding, and people are already using these systems to work through their lives on their own phone. Instead of competing with these giant AI companies, why wouldn't I simply license my methodology to them? It could take me about 8 months because it's a process in order to get into, selling or licensing your proprietary to these companies. So I did all the research, etc. It's very clean, it's sophisticated, it's low stress. At the end of the day, I could put my feet up, right? Like my behavioral models in these places, I can work a lot less. At least that was the fantasy. And he asked me this incredibly irritating question. He said, why don't you build the app yourself? I nearly died, okay? I was like, no. Why would I do that? Why would I take on all that work? Why would I build the infrastructure where these enormous companies they've already participated in this experience? Why not jump onto the train that's already moving? And then the question wouldn't leave me alone. After I got off the phone with him, your girl, I was sitting there and I'm like, yo, this is a fascinating idea. I was sitting back, I'm like, this is a fascinating idea. I call myself Babe or L. You would think I would say Dr. Blass, but I don't refer to myself as that in private, right? So I would, or a girl, so I'd be like, girl, what are we doing right now? Like, let's get it together. So I was sitting with myself, and I'm telling you, this question would not leave me alone. And because that's how certain this question worked. And I thought to myself, sometimes the question that irritates you is the question that has identified the edge of your current identity. And I thought, yo, this is a brilliant idea. I was like, oh, listen, we would even have scientists on board to prove this behavioral model. This could be, within the app, and watch the humanity evolve and heal and grow and collect the data and then make it better. And people in this world, we can also offer a free tier, right? And I was like, people in this world wouldn't have to go through the very things that my family went through in our evolution of a family and our lineage. We came from where women, think about it. Okay, the 40s, the 50s, well, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, where how women's rights were and how relationship dynamics were and the lack of mental health and emotional capacity and healing. And I mean, my family has been through so much crap, okay, that we've had to evolve from and grow from. And I thought to myself, if we had this app, if we had these opportunities back in those days, our lineage would have looked so different. I mean, half the things that I went through as a single mom when my children were younger, they would have never even experienced that. They would have gotten definitely a different version of mom because I would have had access to this great work, And so I started thinking and processing and drawing things out and asking, if I didn't have to produce the business model I had before, what would I build? If content wasn't the product, what would the product actually be? If artificial intelligence could interact dynamically with a person instead of simply serving them another pre-recorded lesson, if this system could remember patterns over time, what would be the possibilities there? If it could help someone organize their business, their relationships, their goals, their decisions, their behavior, what becomes possible? If I gave them a dashboard where they can see the evolution of self in real time, what would that do for them? Because I'm a visual person and I like graphs and colors. And I was just like, I want to see my behavior change. I want to see my growth. I want to see my evolution of self. I want to see my patterns break. I want to see, we have it in our mind or we might feel the difference. I've had clients for years, decades, just feeling the difference of the behavior change, but not being able to see it in real time in digital form. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that would be so fascinating. You can open an app and you could be like, yo, look how far I've come. What is this? And build all this confidence and work through patterns that were keeping you small or not allowing you to grow and evolve your business into the $1 million, $1 billion business that you were meant to have. Is this possible? If Mind Redesign wasn't something someone simply learned, but something the technology could help them apply in the moment when they needed it most, what becomes possible? Within about 48 hours, I was building the app. So much for retirement, right? I came out of retirement after like 8 months and living off of my savings and enjoying and spending money and giving it away because I love giving money away. That's my thing, right? You got to know yourself, right? And I thought to myself, how could I help people in the future? And I don't want to call myself a Christian because that word gets thrown around so loosely and it disgusts me, okay? Because people don't follow through, but I will call myself a disciple of Christ, and I work with the Holy Spirit, right? So in my mind, and this might turn you off, and I appreciate your honesty and your level of quality, and I bless you, and I thank you so much for even listening to me this far because I love you and I'm here for you. And even if we don't see eye to eye on certain spirituality, respect, it's fine. We can still be obsessed with each other's health, and love each other so purely and profoundly. So I was sitting with the Holy Spirit and I was just like, and for those of you who don't know who the Holy Spirit is, I know it sounds strange, but it's another version of God, okay? The 3-in-1. So you have to Google it, ask ChatGPT. Okay, so I was sitting with the Holy Spirit and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if when the rapture happens, like when people need food and they can't buy or sell and they get left behind, because things weren't doing whatever it was that they needed to do in order for that not to happen. And God help me, I don't want to be there for that either. But if I am there, I'm going to fight to the death of me to ensure that, we all stay strong. And so I thought to myself, how about if I prepare a place for them? Jesus said, I go and I prepare a place for you. And I thought to myself, we're supposed to, and then and there's another scripture that says to reflect God, right? And so if I'm going to reflect God, then I have to prepare a place for the people that will be left behind. Maybe if I don't think it's going to be myself, but if it is, I would need a place to go and survive. So I'm a bit dramatic at times and theatrical. I hope you are entertained. So I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have so much work to do. And then not only thinking about the future, but thinking about right now, the people that don't have resources and money and access to medical care or mental health. And I was like, listen, I was a single mom. I couldn't afford it. If I had Mind Redesign at that time, please, I would have never stayed in that traumatic relationship. You know what I mean? Like, life would look so different. Anyway, I'm creating this podcast to be too long. Let me get back on brand here. Well, this is all brand, right? Should this still be the one thing, the thing that I'm trying to make work? Can I evolve? And I spoke to this one billionaire, and he said another billionaire, and he said to me, he said, Elsie, you are thinking too small. You're only thinking one-on-one sessions. You're only thinking group. You are thinking too small. You have to create impact for the world if you want to be a billionaire. You're not going to be, I think the way we're going right now, you're not going to be a billionaire, because I told him I wanted to become a billionaire. You're not going to be a billionaire if you keep doing things like that, like one-on-one and group. It's just not going to happen in the age and where we're going. But if you want to get there with more success, you have to evolve. So I had to sit with myself, and that's when I came up with the app idea, or not the app idea, but licensing the model, and then the app, and then, and it kept going, right? And the reason why I need billions of dollars is because we have to be able to feed, clothe, heal, help millions of people, right? I mean, millions of people. So, it's not so much for me to buy a pretty outfit, and, I could care less about name brands and things like that. I don't have time for that. I don't have time and energy to make someone else rich. I do like nice things, and I'm not so much worried about the cost, but I do like nice things. I just don't put so much value on things because I'm not going to need it when I leave. And at some point, my time will be up here. So I'm right now doing what I need to do on this earth because I feel like that's what God is calling me to do. And I don't have time to entertain nonsense like I need this name brand, blah, blah, blah. Like I just don't have time for that. Like, will I have certain type of gadgets and things? Of course. Like I love tech. I love cars. I love, I love boats. I love planes. God help me. I love planes. But there's a method to the madness, and there's a reason for utilizing these things that we have available to purchase. Okay. Now let me hurry up, because I was also thinking maybe we need a different machine that applies to everyone: business, career, relationships, health, money, identity, even the way you organize your day. Humans develop familiarity with systems, and familiarity has enormous behavioral power. And I do want to get into, in the future podcast, what the app can do for you, how it can help you make your life amazing and better in so many ways. So if you allow me the next few weeks, I will be sharing all the ways that our company, NACIA, will benefit your life and give you the life that you finally want. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted something to help me give me the life that I wanted so badly. And I thought to myself, I'm going to have to create this thing for other people and for myself. So once something becomes normal, the nervous system doesn't necessarily evaluate whether it's optimal. It evaluates whether it is known, right? So I had to adjust and create things that were going to be extraordinary for your body. That means you can remain extraordinarily committed to a structure that your future no longer requires. And this is where mind redesign becomes so important. The goal is not merely changing thoughts. The goal is identifying the architecture underneath repeated behavior. What do I keep doing? What happens immediately before I do it? What am I predicting? What am I protecting? What response becomes automatic? What identity keeps reinforcing it? And then, what would I design if I weren't required to preserve the old architecture? So I came up with NACIA, which stands for Neuro-Adaptive Cognitive Intelligence Action. And what we're building is not another library of self-help content. We're building behavioral intelligence. And at the center of that ecosystem is ARIA. That's our AI. And ARIA and the cognitive mind twin, because I have two things. We have Aria, the cognitive mind twin, and which is the Mind Redesign, and then we have Aria projects. And I'll in tomorrow's episode, I will share with you what those two things are and what they can do to help you. The idea behind Mind Twin is that instead of every conversation existing as an isolated moment, we begin building a longitudinal, I always have struggle with saying this word, longitudinal understanding of the actual individual using the product. Not just what did you say today, but what patterns have been appearing over time within the last few weeks of you using our software? What goals keep returning? What do you make progress? Where do you make progress? Where do you retreat? Where do you procrastinate? What circumstances seem to proceed that procrastination? What happens to your stress, your mood, your energy? What interventions did you actually complete? What changed afterwards? And where did an old pattern reappear? That's an entirely different relationship with technology, because I don't want AI that simply gives you a beautiful answer. I want to explore whether technology can help people convert insight into action, and action into repeated behavior, and repeated behavior into evidence of change. And let me tell you why this matters. Here's another reason I've become so interested in this. Because people are already going to artificial intelligence with extraordinarily personal parts of their lives. Their relationship, anxiety, career decisions, money, identity, business, loneliness, parenting, purpose. The coaching industry has already been affected dramatically by generative AI. And I believe we're going to see even more profound changes as these systems become more multimodal, personalized, and capable. We're going into super intelligence within the next 3 to 5 years. Human beings still matter enormously. Psychologists matter, coaches matter, physicians matter, friends matter, families matter, community matters, human discernment matters. And I do not believe responsible AI should pretend otherwise. But I also don't believe we should look at what is happening and pretend people aren't increasingly turning to AI. I don't want to be delusional. I didn't want to be delusional. Because they are. They're doing it for a very understandable reason. It's where it's on the device already in their hand at 6 a.m, at midnight, before the meeting, after the breakup, while they're building the company, when they're scared to make a phone call, when they're wondering whether they're repeating the same pattern again. That's why I'm becoming so interested in this question. If humans are going to form increasingly meaningful relationships with artificial intelligence, how do we build those systems responsibly? That's a much more interesting problem to me than how do we create another chatbot. I don't want to do that. The company itself is kind of like an experiment into the future of the work of mental health. And I want to do it with care and love and protection for humanity. And even the way we're building NACIA reflects that idea. Something happened during this process that I did not anticipate. I became an engineer, not because I woke up one morning and thought, you know what would be fun? Software engineering. I don't know, that kind of like fell on my lap. I became an engineer because I needed a product to exist. And when you are building something and you don't have an enormous engineering department sitting down, the hall, you figure things out. You learn, you build, you break something, you fix it, you ask better questions, you use the technology that's available. And when I realized something else, I could use AI not only inside the product, I could use AI to help operate the company. So NACIA now has a specialized AI workforce supporting different functional areas of the business: operations, marketing, finance. I have chief of operations, and that is an AI employee. I have all of these AI employees now: partnership, customer service, risk and compliance. They're all AI agents, saving me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I do have to worry about hiring once we get past a certain point. But right now, our business is based off of AI employees and real human scientists. So I do have my humanity there, right? We need our humans. They work under human direction. These AI models work under human direction. But they allow me to extend my cognitive and operational capacity in a way that would have been extraordinarily expensive for an early stage founder only a few years ago. And then alongside that AI infrastructure is something I consider essentially human scientific oversight, not metrics, not merely clicks, not merely retention, but humans. We're developing our research infrastructure so human scientists can evaluate appropriately aggregated and de-identified behavioral information and help us ask these upcoming questions. Are people progressing? Are the interactions useful? Are there patterns we need to understand? Where are they getting stuck? And are we creating something that is ethically responsible? Are users maintaining agency? Are we minimizing unnecessary data exposure, protecting our users? Are we creating something that actually improves people's lives rather than simply increasing the amount of time they spend inside of an application? Those are very different successful metrics, and I think technology is desperately needing those conversations. I don't want to keep you too long. We're going to have a part 2 of this episode, so stick with me. But that's why this season in my life has been teaching me so much. Evolution isn't always addictive. Sometimes evolution looks like subtraction. Sometimes it's selling something. Sometimes it's walking away from a business model. Sometimes it's admitting that the version of you who built something is not required to operate it forever. And sometimes, apparently, you think you're going to retire, and 48 hours later, you're engineering an artificial intelligence company. Life is interesting that way. So welcome to this next era of Mind Redesign, the Dr. Blass Podcast. I'm going to bring you behind the scenes as we build NACIA. We're going to talk about psychology, neuroscience, behavioral, artificial intelligence, business, money, relationships, leadership, identity, and the very strange experience of building the next version of yourself while simultaneously building something you hope will matter in the world. Because that's Mind Redesign. We don't simply ask, how do I cope with the life I already have? We ask, what needs to be redesigned so that I can create the life I'm actually capable of living? I'm Dr. Elsie Blass, founder of NACIA, and apparently not retired. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care of yourselves and each other and stay close. We're going to do this life together. We're going to do it safely. We're going to do it with health. We're going to protect ourselves. We're going to protect others. And we are going to evolve and change our whole entire life for the better. I'm going to do this with you. Let's do this together. Bye for now.